Ta-da. All right, here we go. All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I got a great guest on our show. Her name is Tiffany. You want to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everybody.
Before we get started here, you want to give a shout out to anybody too, or do you want to?
I'll just shout out to my husband, Josh, and my little baby, Jeremiah.
Hi, Josh. Hi, Jeremiah. Awesome. So the one way I like to start off every episode here is, what's one thing you're grateful for today and why?
My biggest one is my son.
Nice.
I never thought I could have kids. So that's oh my God, don't even start. But
Should I get the tissues or what?
I promise I wouldn't cry today either. But no, he is the biggest blessing in my life right now. So.
Awesome. That's awesome. That makes
Yeah.
me smile, right?
Yeah.
Like, you totally see the world differently after you have children, eh? Like,
Mm-hmm.
the way you
Yeah.
view people, the way you view things, like, it just, everything changes, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. Do you want to share with us what your childhood upbringing was like?
Yeah. So I mean, we grew up in poverty. My mom was on welfare. My dad left when I was actually like what, a day old, pretty much. Stole a bunch of jewelry from my cookum and just left. Said I wasn't his. And my mom honestly was not the greatest at keeping a man. Like my two older sisters have their own dads. I have his different dad, and then my brother has its own different dad. And he's actually a year younger than me. So life was pretty chaotic. I mean, at such a young age, I remember sitting at the top of the stairwell and smelling all the pot that was coming from the basement. A lot of my family is criminals, drug addicts, um, and a lot of people know me for my cousin, Junior. So I don't mind saying it. I'm a Melnick and proud of it, but at the same time, like they came with a curse because they were all into trouble. So that was hard. I witnessed a lot of fights, a lot of abuse, a lot of stealing, cops raiding houses. Like, I mean, that was typical. Um, I know that my mom was a big partier, loved going out and drinking, and then would come home late at night, and we'd always be left with different babysitters. And growing up, my cookum would try and get us into church and Sunday school, and knowing who God was. And so I would pray a lot, praying that the abuse would stop, praying things like my mom would come home sober or that she'd just come home. Um, and that continued for many years. Eventually, we just kept getting evicted from every place. I mean, that's a typical thing because my mom couldn't either afford to pay the bills because she spent it all on dope or so we were constantly moving. We had moved from Edmonton and then we went out to Red Deer. So now we were further away from our family because everyone was in Edmonton. And I think for my mom, it was like a way to get out and try and do better. But of course, she just found the same old people. So drug dealers were in and out, working girls my mom would take care of. She'd just have little kids over to watch them while their parents went and got high. So it was just dysfunctional. But when we went to Red Deer, things started getting worse. And I was about 11 years old at the time. The fights were happening every night. The partying was happening every night. It was either me and my brother sitting in front of the TV, um, you know, sitting there and then them locking themselves in the bedroom or vice versa, them sitting in the living room and them saying, okay, you sitting here with the TV. And it just kind of, you started to understand. And I mean, I was at that age where I was securing my brother and making sure he didn't see anything. But yeah, things were pretty bad. And I remember I'd always like clean up, especially after a fight, but there was always like spoons full of dope. Or the coffee mug, and they cook in the kitchen, right? And so there was always dope everywhere. So I was actually carpet picking before I was smoking dope, and I started saving all this. And one day, my brother had went to his friend's house, and my mom, my uncle, and my stepdad were in the bedroom again, and they ordered pizza like they typically would, and I was in front of the TV watching a movie, but I had grabbed that big white bag and I went right to their door. And just a week before that, a drug dealer had left, and so he was staying with us for almost a week and a half. And so when I knocked on the door and I asked, "What are you guys doing in here?" And of course, the barrel of smoke comes in my face, and they're like, "Oh, nothing." And I'm like, "Is this what you're doing?" And immediately they thought I stole it from the dealer. And they were pissed at me. And I'm like, "No, you guys are idiots. You leave it everywhere. Like, I mean, it's on the floor, it's on the tables, it's on spoons, it's everywhere." And so, of course, then they realized now I had all the dope, so they invited me in. And my mom said, if you're ever going to do drugs, I'd like you to do them in front of me. Now, she didn't know that I had actually smoked pot already with the neighborhood kid with on pop can, like, a couple
Oh
weeks
yeah.
back. So that was my first experience of having anything. But, and then my first hit of crack cocaine was with my mom, stepdad, uncle, and
How old were you?
11.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I loved it. I loved the taste, the smell, the way it made me feel. They're like, you won't be able to eat. And I'm like, watch me eat this pizza, right? Because they just ordered me pizza. And I ate like literally 3 pieces of pizza. And they're like, okay, you're not going to be able to sleep. And so then I pretended to sleep, but I really wasn't asleep. And yeah, so that was pretty interesting for me. I started understanding who my mom was, and I was yearning for that attention from her. Like I wanted to be around her. I wanted, that acceptance. And so yeah, but it was pretty hard because my brother had no idea. Like my brother did know about what they were doing because he used to put like, this is how we played. So we played drug dealers and, criminals and cops and robbers. It was like the big thing,
That
right?
was
And
Barbies.
so my brother would actually make up drug baggies full of flour, and it would actually trick the dealers. So sometimes they go into our room or whatever and, crash there, and they'd see that and think my brother's packing, and it, like, he was 10 at the time, but it was just flour.
Yeah.
So then my mom's like, no, you idiots, that's flour or baking soda or whatever my brother decided to use that day, right? And
Yeah.
so he had that mentality of gangster, drug dealer, wanting to follow all of my cousins and my uncles. And me, I still loved school. Like I was kind of living a double life. Like I was an honor student. I loved being at school. I loved, all the sports, cheerleading, plays and musicals, because I loved to do other things.
Yeah.
Um, but at home, when I was there, I was just sad and depressed, and all I wanted to do was get high. And so, could you imagine a little girl calling out to her mom all the time, "Mom, mom, mom," just for her to bring me another hit?
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I started getting my own paper routes and had my own money for my own drugs, and then my mom would purchase that for me and buy us booze. Um, and then Red Deer got pretty chaotic, her between her and my stepdad. At one point, we actually got put into foster care. My mom had been pushed down the stairs by my stepdad and broke all of her front teeth.
Oh wow.
And my nieces and nephew, actually one of the niece I was with today, she was there as well. And her parents had to drive in from Edmonton. There was a cops there. We got taken in. And I was so mad at my mom. Like, how could she let that happen? And but I did understand why they were taking us away, and I just didn't want them to separate from me and my brother. And we were miserable at every foster home because we had been placed, because my brother was trouble. Like he was, acting out.
Yep.
And he also liked wrestling. So places wouldn't allow him to play wrestle or
Mm.
allow him to watch WWE, like something so dumb. But he was rough. And, because he's also dealing with abuse
Yeah.
and stuff like that and acting out. And anyway, so we kept getting placed in different homes, and then eventually my sister stepped up. After I think it was 6 months, one day my mom said she had been clean for such amount of time, and we are like, Mom, we want to come home. So she actually secretly paid for our Greyhound tickets, and me and my brother snuck out of my sister's house in the middle of the night and went back home. And that's the thing. No matter how bad things were, I always wanted to be with my mom.
Well, kids will really show you unconditional love, right? Like
Yeah.
it's crazy. And I know in active addiction, some of the people that I saw too, that just that unconditional love that children give, like it didn't matter what you did, they always longed for that their parents' attention, right?
Hmm.
And they always wanted that approval or seek that approval.
Yeah.
So I totally understand.
Yeah. And so pretty much as time went on, like things started getting like just as bad. Like we were then having no electricity at times. My mom couldn't afford to pay that. So I know how to set up all my candles right in the house. No heat. So I know how to open my oven and actually turn it on and give myself heat. I know like all these little tricks that are, because we went without, and especially in the middle of winter, a lot of the time. I know what it's like to have food banks. I know what it's like to, you know, to suffer with no Christmas presents and have Salvation Army, Santa's Anonymous bring us presents and stuff. So I was that kid that throughout my entire life had all these, things given to me by the public. So I'm honestly really grateful too, because you don't realize how many people helped me along the way,
Hmm.
even though I didn't know it at the time. Um, and my mom went right back into her old habits. Of course, her and my stepdad. they just continued to drink, and then, would party every once in a while, and then they just say it was a treat. So I continued to use. Again, we ended up getting evicted, and so we moved to another town. From Red Deer, we moved to Ponoka. And then I was there from grade 8 until grade 11. And throughout that time, now I was the new kid, right? Me and my brother were popular as shit, because we were the party house. Our parents were buying us booze. So it was chaotic, but we loved it. And we were now popular, and I was still in honor roll. My brother was struggling. He had literally done grade 9 for 3 years in a row. Um but things just got worse and worse. um and yeah, I think we had lived in 4 different places, and we had been raided twice while we were in Ponoka, because my mom started associating with gangs like Samson True Soldiers and a few other Indian gangs. And so we, again, throughout all of this, we were actually distant from my 2 older sisters, so they kept really just wanting us to do better, or for my parents to like let us see them, or because they loved us. My sister Tina especially, like, she loved me and my brother.
How'd your sisters get out of it? Like,
So my sister and them, they're actually 16 and 20 years older than me.
oh wow,
So they have their whole life. They have their own kids. My sister Tracy was very depressed throughout her whole life. Like, she did also smoke crack with my mom once and never did it again. And same with Tina. Tina pretty much moved out at 18 after I was 2 years old, because Tina took care of me until I was 2. But they had just had enough of my mom's bullshit.
yeah,
Now, see, Tracy got depressed, and Tina just moved on with her life and made something of herself. So
yeah,
Tina was always my role model of what I wanted, like, because she raised 2 beautiful kids that are doing so well. Same with Tracy, but Tracy had a lot of struggles. Like, she's
yeah.
depression really bad. Like, she had ECGs.
At least you had a positive role model that you at least knew there was something else or potentially something better out there
Out there.
that life could. There's a different way of life, anyways, right?
Yeah. So they were just sick of my mom's shit. But for me, I couldn't get rid of, I didn't want to be away from my mom. And so every time my sister would try and say, well, mom's just going to do that again, or it's going to happen again, I would get mad at my sister. So Tracy, me, and Tyler didn't have really good of a connection. Tracy just kind of disowned us, but Tina stuck by us to make sure we were okay. Um, but like I said, we never would reach out, and we wouldn't tell her the truth. We lied. Like, we never said our house was getting raided and
Yeah.
that drug dealers were in and out. And so, yeah, every time too we got raided, something always happened where the dope was in my dad's semi, or the dealer didn't make it there in time. And so when they came, DEA, like, there was nothing there.
By the
So
grace of
we,
God. Yeah.
by the grace of
I
God, every
guess.
time, yeah. My brother did keep getting in trouble, but me, I was like the up and up. Like, I hated doing crime. The one thing I was a thief. My mom actually taught us when we were living in Red Deer how to boost,
Okay.
and so I had known how. And I continued to do that with her, like simple things like groceries and our school supplies, and new school clothes and coats. So that was my thing. But other than that, I hated all other crimes. I would actually get so like paranoid and anxiety when people were doing criminal acts,
Yeah.
actually. And it carried into adulthood. I actually still don't have a criminal record
Nice.
because of that. But yeah, when we were in Ponoka, grade 11, I remember I was so mad when we got evicted again, and I had to move right before my graduation year and make all new friends. And
Oh,
like, I was so mad at her. Like, how do you guys keep letting this happen over and over again?
yeah.
Um, but again, throughout all this, we were continually using. We moved out to Devon, which was a little bit closer to Edmonton. So my sister was really happy that she was able to come. Throughout all this, I always had a job, like working at Dairy Queen, Tim Hortons. Like, I was always working, always, and then going to school full time too. So yeah, as we got to Devon again, we continued that same thing again, having to make all new friends. So that's why I feel like I'm so outgoing. It's because
Oh,
I have to constantly adjust and make new friends, or get people to like me and get people's approval. That was something that was big for me. Like, if
that
if
makes
someone didn't like me, I would cry about it for days, right? And I didn't know why. So, I guess it's part of my ego, but I just, for me, that was a big deal, because I had, always having to start over. Um, and in Devon, I graduated high school with honors. I was actually the third person in my family to graduate, which was a big
Nice.
deal because, like, my mom only has her grade 9, like my brother has his grade 10. My sister Tina and Tracy were the two. Oh, and I think so, actually fourth because my uncle Wayne also graduated.
I graduated
Um,
by fluke. I got most of my credits in kiddie jail. In and out of jail, that's where I got my education. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But I graduated. I got a diploma. So
cool.
yeah, it's
Well,
kind of shot. And I even won an award when I
that's
graduated.
cool.
Yeah, that was fucking crazy.
Yeah, that is cool.
So
Yeah, no, I remember I won an I'm a Terrific Kid award actually. And then I also won that. You remember that Dare program?
yes.
Okay. So because of my life that was so secret, I actually wrote a story about addiction.
Okay.
And I actually was picked my story and I got to go and speak to schools. And I was like about 15 at the time. So this is before I graduated, but I actually got to go to schools and tell them about addiction and let alone I'm a crackhead and no one even knew it.
Yeah, fun. Wow.
Yeah. And then after my grade 12 year, so we'd only been there maybe a year and a half, we got evicted again. And this time they're like, well, let's go back to Edmonton. So here we go back to Edmonton, right in Abbotsfield, right in the hood. Um, and of course, I started working at Boston Pizza and Cash Money. So I actually had two really good jobs, but things were just so chaotic. The fights, I mean, it was just getting worse and worse. Like when they talk about progressive, like I do understand that now because if
Mhm.
I look back, like it used to be just a treat here and there. Then it became to, just the weekends. And then it was just, and then plus paydays or holidays, certain things. But now it's every single day. Like we could
Yep.
not go without crack. There was always liquor in the house, always pot in the house. Me and my brother were selling mushrooms, acid, ecstasy, anything you needed, we had. And yeah, so I remember this really scary story that I thought would have scared me straight. I was walking a friend home just up the road, and I had witnessed these feet out of a limo, and I was freaking out. And I touched them, and it was cold, and it was a dead body.
Wow.
And if you've actually ever been down 32nd Street, there was all these Somalian homes, and I'm not going to say that was them, but that's who walked out of the door, and it was 10 guys, and I just booked it. I mean, I was scared for my life. And they used to drive through that limo all around the area,
Oh
right?
wow.
And so I was just so scared. I ran with my friend, hid in her apartment, me and my brother, and then walk around the block to come get us and then walk back home because I was so scared. Like we lived a block away from where that limo was.
Yeah.
So um and like none of that scared me straight. It just made me want to get high more.
Oh yeah, you hide or yeah.
Yeah,
That's
right?
how you
Like,
deal with it, right? That's how you
yeah.
deal with that fear. You're like,
Like,
I
holy
know how to
shit.
fix that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I never knew of anything that ever came to be. And I don't know who that person was. And, I probably could have done something. I think about that all the time that I probably could have called the cops and, you know
Oh,
what I mean, done something, but I was so scared.
well, you're still
Um,
a kid, right? So
well, this time I was an adult because I'm about 19 now.
you're still a kid at 19. You're still a kid at 19. Like, so
Yeah.
if you're 19 out there, forgive me, but
Yeah.
you still got a whole like a lot of life experiences
Yeah.
ahead of you.
Yeah, so that was one moment where like you think that would just get me to stay sober. And again, I started dating a dealer because that's just what I did. And my house was a constant trap house, people constantly in and out. And around that time was when my cook was living with us. And that was probably the best time that I actually got to spend with her because she actually passed away about almost a year later. She actually went and lived with all of us, my mom. She went and lived with my sister Tina, Tracy, and then she went out and lived with my auntie Janet, and she got to pretty much say her goodbyes to
Let's go.
everybody in her own way. And so that was a hard year. And by the time I'm 20, I finally move out on my own. And I'm like, I'm never going to be like my mom. I'm never going to have people in and out of my house. I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to do that. And that's literally like within a week. I had the dealers in and out. I had the working girls in and out. I was taking care of them, spotting for them, making sure they were safe while still maintaining my job at Cash Money and Boston Pizza. I was the store controller, so I was like in charge of the big safe, and I opened the store, closed the store, and we also were the walk-in branch for 5 other locations. So
Okay.
I would actually be on the phone with them to make sure they got in through their security breaches. And that was such a great opportunity, but using, I had not slept in over a week. And right before my shift, I remember I passed out. I literally, my clothes were right beside me to put on. I was just putting on the news, and I passed right out. And I actually could have been charged because I risked the lives of 5 other people, including my manager,
Oh, wow.
who had to then come in at 12, which is way late. People are outside, and you know what I mean. It's a big franchise, right?
How
So
did you risk the lives of?
because when you're a walk-in branch, so say you're walking into it's like a bank,
Yep.
right? You're walking in there and you're on the phone with someone doing your priority calls, and someone walked in behind them
Oh, I
and
get what you're saying. Okay.
and robbed them or killed them for the money in the safe. Like, and it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So when you're a walk-in branch, like I said, it's the safety of 5 other locations plus my own.
I get what you're saying.
So yeah, I actually was supposed to be charged, and I never got. They just never pursued it. They just told me like, you're fired immediately. Give me back the keys and
Oh.
this and that. And so that was pretty hard on me because I lived literally right behind it. I don't know if you've ever seen the little Abbotsfield where that Cash Money is, right behind that little brick apartment. It's like, okay, well, that
Maybe.
apartment, you maybe next time you drive down Abbotsfield and you see the little Dairy Queen and
Okay.
it's literally that brick apartment right behind. So you not very far. Like I used to get high and just on my brakes and then come back.
Oh, wow.
You know, so
It's that close. Yeah.
yeah, it's that close. Um, and then I don't know, things got worse and worse. One time there was this black gentleman that he was just he just wanted sex from me, and it was very scary for me because during this time I had actually lost my house keys, and so I couldn't leave. I couldn't kick him out. I had no phone. So I literally went to my neighbors, borrowed her phone, called one of the working girls, and she's like, okay, we'll just leave him there, we'll figure it out after, I'll get someone to go kick him out. And so I went to this gentleman's house with her, and he was such a nice John. I never seen someone so nice. All he cared about was my well-being. Like I told him, like I was so sick because I was sick of the dope, sick that I to my stomach. I was 100 pounds soaking wet. Like I, just lost my job. I'm on the verge of losing my apartment. There's this creepy guy in my house that won't leave. You know, and then, anyways, so he actually brought up detox, and I had never heard of Arc Detox before. And so I was like, well, I guess I could, go. But my girlfriend was supposed to go with me. She was like my buddy. Like she's like, yeah, I'll go too. I'll go too. Right? Like,
Yeah.
let's
Like,
do this
yeah.
together.
What are friends for, right?
Right?
What are friends for?
Exactly. And then she bailed, but I still went because
Cool.
I was like, I at least need to get healthy enough so where I can eat and then I can go back to smoking dope. That was my whole thought, right? I'm
So,
like,
how old were you? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
that's
off there.
okay.
How old were you in that?
20.
Okay, so you're 20 then. Was that your first introduction or the first thing you ever heard about
First
recovery?
introduction to detox, right?
Right.
Because I had just been fresh only in Edmonton about a year and a half now, right? And I always lived in small towns. There was nothing like that in these small towns, which is sad. That's why I do want to help Leduc because I know what it's like to be in a small town.
Yep.
There's no supports out there.
Yep.
And yeah, so of course, my first experience, I'm shaking. Like I know people say you shouldn't be shaking off crack, but I was also coming off alcohol, like mushrooms. Anything you had, I wanted it, and I did it. At that time, I actually hadn't started using meth, so it was mainly crack cocaine, but I was using like at least a ball a day. And so I was shaking coming off. Because I'd been using since the time I was 11. That's a very long time. So my body was in complete shock, and I was in the back bed and I'm shaking, and this lady Paulette comes in and rips the bedding off, and it had been day 5 of me just sitting in that room. I didn't eat, I didn't do nothing, I just slept because I hadn't slept for so long.
I get that feeling. I know what that's like.
Yeah, so she's like, you need to get downstairs to a meeting. And I was like, I freaking need a meeting. She's like, you need a freaking meeting. And she's like, get your things, get a house coat on, let's go. So she drug me down there, and that was my first panel experience. And one of the people there just passed away, which was pretty hard because I couldn't relate to the girl's story.
Yep.
Like she's like, I grew up in a good home, and I started smoking dope with a friend. Like, can't really relate to that, like, buddy. I've been through abuse. I kind of skipped over that. I was sexually abused by a family member, but physically, mentally, like I was living in poverty. Like
Yep.
this is my lifestyle. My whole family is like, you know what I mean, addicted. So it isn't like I just started with a friend and I have great family to go home to.
Yep.
So for me, I couldn't wrap my head around a story. So I just freaking dumb. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't even want to be here. I'm not, they don't understand me.
Yeah.
And then this gentleman, Preston, spoke, and he understood what it was like because he also had used dope with his family. And that was where someone could understand, even though it's a male and they say, like, don't, but there was one person that I'm like, okay, I was intrigued because now somebody out there went through something similar to me. Um, and that kind of had me going. I'm like, well, maybe there is hope, maybe I can do better. But then someone said something along the lines of, you got to change people, places, and things. That means I'm going to have no frickin' family, no home to go to. That's no Thanksgivings, no Christmases. So I am going to be alone the rest of my life. That thought scared the shit out of me. But I remember Paulette saying, it's okay, just one day at a time. And she helped me track start going into a treatment center door to door. And during that time, you can actually stay there up to 14 days. Like
Okay.
now it's so like 7 days and you got to go, right? But then it was like you can stay a little bit longer. And so she got me into Bonnieville Treatment Center. And I was really grateful because it was out of town, gave me a chance to clear my head. But in Bonnieville, they only do steps 1, 2, and 3. So I had done my first 3 steps. They're like, when you get out of here and you marble out, you go and reach a sponsor, you go to meetings. The lady loved me so much. And at the time, what was that place called? It's a woman's house. I'll probably come to me. But it's a sober living house, and it's one of the hardest ones to get into. And so she had said, I will get you in. All you have to do is make sure you leave here and you go right there. I'm like, I can do that. I'm like, I promise. And she asked if I wanted anyone to come to my marbling out because I had done it. That's 42 days plus the 14 days I was there. So that's about the longest I had ever been sober in my life. Well, besides before when I was 11. And so I'm like, I was so proud. I had the lady speak for me. And she gave me, it was just a beautiful ceremony. And my parents, my mom and stepdad, actually came to my marbling out.
Nice.
They stayed in their vehicle and they were sober on a Saturday. You know how freaking crazy that was. That to me was another blessing. I'm like, yeah, like
miracles
other
can
people.
happen.
Yes, other people are doing this too. I'm rubbing off on somebody. So as we're leaving, and because in Bonnieville there's not a lot of service, so you head into the city. I think we were about an hour out, and Dad's phone is just going off. Like, I mean, going off. Like, there is an emergency. My brother was beaten so bad in the hospital by my ex-boyfriend. And it pretty much looked like he was dead. I wish I had a picture still. His face smushed in, just sitting there. It looked like he was dead. So I was in shock. And instead of going to that sober living house, my first instinct was, I need to fucking get high. I didn't even go see my brother first. I got high first, and then I went and seen him. But then he was also being arrested at the same time, so it was kind of hard. He was literally in handcuffs in the hospital bed. And I also had some fabulous idea that I would bring someone back with me. He was this awesome, flamboyant, gay friend of mine, and he was going to buy us a bunch of dope. So I brought him back home to live with us. And by the way, at the time, we already had my mom, my stepdad, my brother, a girlfriend of mine, my brother's girlfriend. I think there was like 8 people in the house, but we're like, yeah, come with us. First, it was just giving him a ride.
Yeah.
But then after that situation, I was like, I need to get high too. Because he wasn't even there for that. He just needed to sober up a bit because he had a terminal illness. Like, he was dying. And so he was just sobering up a bit to go back out. You know, those people that just do the revolving door. But that wasn't my intentions. My intentions were to make it to that sober living house, and it didn't happen. And so my journey just kept on going. And then it was like, I met a guy through a good job that I had. So I started doing sales, door-to-door sales. selling gas and power contracts for Just Energy. I don't know if anyone remembers them knocking on your door.
Yep.
That was me. And every time I took my coat off, I was signing that freaking deal. Like, let me tell you, I was making anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 a week.
That's crazy.
So I could afford my own freaking drug habit. I didn't need nobody. I didn't need no man. I didn't need to be on welfare. I didn't need, and I was proud. Like, I was very proud of myself because it was something I was really excelling at. I was
Yep.
actually one of their top writers, and I actually would have, if I wasn't high, I should have been in Punta Cana, I think it's called. Yeah. So I won a trip there, and I didn't even go because I was so fucking high. But I used to literally smoke rock down alleys, knock on your door 2 seconds later, and then
Yep.
just spitballing. But it was everything. Like, I couldn't stop using long enough. So I couldn't even get a day clean now at this point, and I felt like my addiction just got worse. But I had a home. I had everything I
Oh, yeah.
needed, right? So I thought I was doing good,
Yep.
but I'm doing better now. I'm better than my family. And then, of course, my family at one point got evicted. And so I actually let them come stay with me. Um, and at the time, I had just had a new boyfriend, too. So I'd met him through the work. And this is my first real boyfriend. I never really had real boyfriends. I guess they were just
Yeah, I get what you're
sex
saying.
things, you know what I mean? But this was a real boyfriend that actually liked me and wanted me to stay away from my family because he let me move in 2 days after knowing me because my mom beat the shit out of me. But then 3 months later, when they got evicted, I'm like, but you got to let them live with us. And that was hard for him.
Oh, I bet.
He just wanted me out of that life. He knew I was an addict. He knew I was struggling, but he's seen how much better I was doing. He's like, you're better than them. You know, you need to stay away from them. They're the reason. And I was like, no, they're not. They're my family. And so they destroyed my house, broke glass tables. My mom was very suicidal throughout my entire life. There are parts I actually kind of skipped out because, well, it's okay if she hears it. She knows she did it. My mom was pretty depressed, and she would actually just slit her throat, slit her wrists in front of us kids.
Oh, wow.
And she did that a lot throughout our time. And this time when I had my own place, Thor had been at work, and it was me and my dad and my mom. We were just ordering dope, but my mom got mad and had a coffee mug and broke my glass table. And we didn't see her grab a glass shard. I just know I was picking up glass pieces, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, the dealer should be hearing about it." My mom grabs it, and it was Thanksgiving Day, and she had her own bedroom, but we didn't see her go in there with it. And
Yeah.
she comes out, and her neck, and it's like a scene from Carrie.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm fucking freaking out because now we got to call an ambulance, and she's already gonna be pissed because like, this is the day before Thanksgiving Day, and she hated when we called the ambulance, hated when we save her.
Yeah.
But that's my freaking mom. I don't care. The dealer can wait. I'm gonna save my mom.
Yep.
So ambulance comes. She's like, "Fuck you! Don't even talk to me." I don't know what happened. Like, it went from cool, we're buying dope.
That escalated quick.
That, and that's the reality of my entire life. It
Wow.
always escalated quick. You never knew what you did wrong. So you always had to walk on eggshells. And so anyways, I remember me and my dad just got high after she left the ambulance because we were like, what the fuck?
What the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
Like, did that really just like processing?
Yes.
You're processing, yeah.
Processing the shit. And so I went to the hospital the next day. It was Thanksgiving Day, and I brought my mom flowers and a card, all the things I had bought for her to give to her on Thanksgiving because I always spoil her on holidays. And she was like, "Get the fuck out of my hospital room." She's like, "I wanted to die."
Wow.
And I don't know where that came from again. And it's like, as a child of a parent, like, you don't know what you're doing wrong that they would want to keep killing themselves,
Yeah.
right? And then that actually started making me very depressed. So my story later, because I didn't commit or try and attempt suicide anytime in that frame, but so anyways, if a year is going by, like, my mom eventually did move into her own place with my stepdad. Things continued on in that route. And then they got evicted again. And this was the second time. And then I'm like, this time we're in a millionaire mansion. Like, I had a great setup, save thing. We let them come live with us. But this time it was my mom, stepdad, and my uncle Dougie, who just passed away. And he was like, I've fucking had enough. Like all they do is drink.
Yeah.
I don't even feel safe in my own fucking living room. Like he's like, I can't do this anymore. And he had promised me he wouldn't leave. He just because he had a tendency of constantly leaving. So I have abandonment issues even with spouses because he would just leave in the relationship for like a month. Like one time he just decided to go to Manitoba. So I'm like, what the fuck? And you know what I mean? But through that relationship, I mean, I wasn't loyal. I was sucking dick for rock when I wasn't working, you know. And then when I was working, I was making so much money. I was just like, fuck you, I'm gonna go party. And then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was always at the clubs. I was always at every concert. You know, Young Jeezy. I mean, every concert you can think of, I've been to. And I was the rebel, you
Yeah.
know. And so I honestly was not a good girlfriend because I have never had good examples of
Yep.
what a normal relationship looks like. What I have is chaos.
Yep.
I'm good at yelling. I'm good at always being right. I'm good at complaining. I'm good at, you know what I mean? Like that's what I grew up with. And so those are my bad habits that I carry into relationships. And so I was toxic as shit for this guy. And I, when he left the last time, I got so depressed because that was the first time I'd actually seen what true love is.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was abandoned again. And so right after that relationship, I'm at a bar and I meet a dealer, and then he became my new boyfriend.
So,
So I had no time to heal.
yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? No time to even process what just happened because he just up and left. He left all of his belongings to me. Like I
He
literally
was
have
just
his,
out.
yeah, I still have his glass desk to this day. I have the fountain. I mean, I have everything because he left it. Like, so I mean, it was mine. And then this new relationship, I was even worse because now I'm more
Probably
depressed. You
damaged,
know,
right?
I'm yeah damaged over and over again. I had lost that place, that Millionaire Mansion. Still doing sales, doing great at it, but this time I switched. I actually left, went to Direct Energy, and then only was there for like a month, and then jumped ship, and then did Canadian Property Stars, which is like aerating lawns. Again, I was good at it because I was great at sales.
Yeah.
So I stuck with that. I was still making lots of money, like $500 a day, because we got paid out cash, and I was the queen of aeration. They actually literally got a crown and everything. um, but I was miserable with the guy I was with. Like, you know, he took advantage of me. He was cheating on me all the time, like, because he's a big shot dealer, right? Like, you know. And I decided, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna move to Toronto. At that time that I was working at CPS, I was there for like a year. I got a really good offer to go sell furnaces in Ontario, and I was
Oh,
like, I'm doing it. Me and my cat, we literally flew to Ontario, and I've had this cat, by the way, since I was at 20. So she's going to be 12. So now I was 18. So I had her a long freaking time. But I was like, me and her are leaving. And then I met amazing singers like Danny Fernandez, Sean Desmond. I met all these
oh,
guys. And I'm like, this is my people. This is my place. And I was doing so well. I was sober an entire month. I was so proud. But then he would ask me, because I'm still dating him, he's like, FaceTime under your bed. I need to make sure there's nobody there. FaceTime your closet. Show me what's going on. So like it was freaking sketchy,
yeah.
like to have to do that. And I'm like, but I'm not doing anything. I promise you, like I'm being faithful. I'm loyal. Like trust me. I need to be out here. It's my place.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to be a singer. That was my goal, you know? And anyways, so after a month of that crap, because I couldn't sleep, he was constantly harassing me. What are you doing? Who are you with? Like fucking sleeping with my
Especially being
cat.
2 hours later, 2 hours behind too. Like, like
Yeah, trying to go
that's
to
a
sleep to go to work the next day. And so I'm like, you know what? I'll fucking come home. You know, I'll do this. I'll prove to you how much I care about you. And I didn't even love this guy. I don't know why the fuck I left a
you
good
did it out of
job.
spite. I can totally identify. It's like fuck you. Like you don't want to, but you do it out of spite just to like
Prove a
say
point.
fuck you.
Yeah,
Like
right?
I'll show you, I'll hurt me. Like I've done that a few times in my life. I will admit, yeah,
Yeah.
just do things out of spite. It's like, fine, fuck, I won't do
Yeah.
it.
So I came back with frickin' 10 G's in my pocket because I had made a decent amount in a month, right? Like I'd been doing really well. And then I still had to pay my own Airbnb, but that 10 grand was mine. So I had my money. He also made a shit ton of money selling dope. And so I think he had about 15. So during this 2 week time frame where I just come home, we always used to lay in my Uncle Dougie's bed in my mom's house. So don't ask me. I always ended up back in my mom's house if I wanted to get high. Like if you pissed me off enough, I'd probably be back in my mom's house getting high. So we were in my Uncle Dougie's room. My brother's room was like connected somehow. And he tells me he fucking cheated on me 2 days after I left. I fucking lost it. Like,
Oh,
I mean, I went fucking bananas. Like, you kidding me? I just gave up all of this for you? Like, I was pissed. And then I had to get high at him. So now I'm smoking all the dope he had, which he had a lot of freaking dope. Spend his $15,000 plus my $10,000. And then we're coming to the end of this 2-week period. He's like, why don't you just move to BC with me? Things will be great out there. It's beautiful. And I'm like, I've never been there. I'm like, sure. So I had packed up everything I owned, not just my cat this time in a suitcase. It was everything I owned, and we put it in a U-Haul. And we drive there with his dad. His dad actually drove down to help us out. And his dad seemed nice. It was cool, all copacetic. But then we get there. He doesn't tell his dad that he cheated on me. He doesn't tell him all the wreckage that he'd been just doing to me. We're both detoxing literally hard because of how much we've been using that week. And I was so pissed. His mom was like, after 2 days of being there, she's like, I think you need to get a job at Tim Hortons or something. Okay, I had just given up an amazing job selling fucking furnaces, and now I have to work at Tim Hortons. That also pissed me off. Like, now I'm
I
depressed
believe it.
because just giving up everything. I still had my cat, so I was at least good, but I was depressed. This is the most depressed I'd ever been in my life. I had tried to, so he was being an asshole to me over and over again. And then his parents were like, Tiffany, you need to relax. You need to calm down. My son's an angel. You were the reason he started smoking dope.
Wow.
He never even told his mom he was a freaking dealer. A
Wow.
big dealer, might I add, in Edmonton. I barricaded myself in his bedroom and started slitting my wrists. So that was my first attempt at trying to hurt myself. They immediately called the ambulance, fire department, because they couldn't get in. I did a good job of barricading. And they literally, they got in there and they took me right to the psych ward. That was my first experience of the psych ward.
That's crazy. I am going to change this up a little bit here. I'm going to fast forward you a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
We're going to get into some recovery. But first, I want you just to kind of like take us to the end of using and paint us a picture.
Okay. So fast forward, I finished that relationship. Ended up on my knees after I left BC because the story was almost done. I left BC with my 2 suitcases after I got out of the psych ward. They kept all my belongings, including my cat. And I remember being stuck down at the airport, and I called the Hope Mission Rescue Van. And that was my first experience of someone bringing up Jesus. And I pretty much told him, F you. I didn't want to hear it. And he's like, well, I think you really need to try this program. There's a women's program out there. It's a year long. It's faith-based. And it's all women. Now, that right in that time frame, I just got kicked out of 2 treatment centers, Henwood and another one after I got back from BC. So it was a little time frame, but I got kicked out for punching women in the face. I'm like, how am I going to go here where there's all these women? It's a God program. I'm angry at God for my childhood.
Yep.
He didn't help me. I felt abandoned by God. And then it's a year long. And he's like, well, how long have you been using? And I said, well, I've only been using like since I was 11. So what, like 15 years, trying to do some math. And he's like, well, I think you could take a year out of your life and try. And so I was living in WEMS until I pretty much got in. And then when I did get into treatment, I was still in that relationship, but ended it. But once I finally got into it, because I finally had a couple days clean, and I was like, no, we're done.
Yep.
Just take care of my cat and I'll be back. And then I met a new man, and he was a godly man.
How old were you?
So all this happened. So 3.5 years ago, I'm 30 now. So I was 26 on the verge of 27.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I met this guy, and I was like, he's better than all these guys. But everyone kept telling me, yo, stay out of a relationship for a year, man. And I'm like, well,
there's a fucking reason for
there is a
There's a
freaking reason for it. I know there is. But he was different. He was reading the Bible with me. He was introducing me to a different aspect of something that I hadn't accepted, which is a higher power. And so during this time, he actually proposed really quickly, like 3 months in. And he's like, I love you. You're an amazing woman. And again, I couldn't take that, but I was so excited. Again, someone wanted to be with me. Yep. Because I always felt like I needed to be saved by a man. And during this time, I eventually told the staff, and he was in the other men's program. So we got the ultimatum that he would let me finish the program and but end the relationship. And he's like, well, I'm not going to end the relationship. He's like, they're like, well, you have to leave and let her finish. And so he did.
Okay.
So I left that same day because I'm like, hey, he loves me.
I see this. I've seen this meme and it's funny. It's like the Cinderella, like the rehab romance of the Cinderella slipping on the blue slipper.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so during that time, we moved into one person's house, and that was a good friend of his. And I damaged the doors. Like I was so freaking high. Like, 'cause I got high that day. Like I didn't even wait. He waited. He used to drive me to the dealer and didn't even use, But me, I just couldn't stop. Again, all these thoughts of shame and guilt and not being good enough. We ended up moving into our own apartment after leaving that place, and it was chaotic again. I had actually given him stitches twice. I threw a cup at him, and the cup shard went into my finger. So I actually was walking around in addiction with two broken middle fingers because this one, I tried to take his phone and he grabbed a good grip. So I had two broken middle fingers. And so I was walking around with finger casts in my addiction because of my own chaos that I was creating. And I don't know how he stayed, but he did. And we got evicted from that place and we're living in the back of our vehicle. And I remember just breaking down, and this is the first real time that I had reached out to God. And I said, if you're freaking really out there and you want to help me out this time, give us a sign or get us into detox. Sure enough, we both get into detox. And the journey started in October 29.
Okay.
And then, yeah, no, 2018. So
Nice.
that's my clean date. And so I ended up going right into Wellsprings. Again, they accept me back with open arms. And I did the program right. But the one thing they said at the beginning is like, you have to stay away from him. I know he's your fiance, but you have to try it for you. And he said, I agree with them. He said, you need to figure out you. I'm going to go back to work because I've already been doing this. I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
And he's also a lot more older than me and wiser. So he's like, I want you to focus on yourself. He's like, I'll still be here. You'll see me at church. You'll still see me at baseball, like the things that we do together. And I'm like, okay. So I remember crying, like, I can't do this alone. But you know what? I'm really grateful I did. I actually followed all the rules, and I'm not a rule follower because my mom never gave me rules.
Yeah.
I actually, started going to meetings. We had to go to 5 outside meetings a week, and then gym 5 times a week. So I started going to CA at Dwayne's home. And I mean, I loved it. I actually, for the first time, felt like a part of, and there was more people there too, so I could hear more stories. It wasn't just the panel of 2
Yeah.
people, but Preston's story stayed in my head, and it was a good reminder that there's someone out here that lived what I lived. And then I started running into people who knew my family. I had one person when I was in detox before I went to Wellsprings. He actually gave me my first Bible verse, and it was the armor of God.
Right.
And he knew me when I was a little girl. And he said, I'm so sorry that you had to grow up in that house because I know I was there. I know I was freaking doing drugs in that house and how many people were committing crimes and everything. He's like, and then he actually told everyone, he's like, you have no idea what this little girl went through. And for someone to acknowledge,
Yeah.
even though I have not seen them since, but for someone to acknowledge what I went through as a child, and
Yeah.
then you're gonna do good things. You're gonna do great things, and you know what? I can't even believe one Melnick's getting out of it. And so, um, through that year, I joined the softball team, Buzzkills. Right, it's a sober baseball team. I really love that because it was me finally doing sports like I used to do in high school. I did 2 sets of steps within 4 months with an amazing sponsor. I actually prayed about who I wanted, and it was someone who was in a relationship with a recovering addict. So, because that's something that I was in, and someone who would not knock my new faith because at that same time, I gave my life to Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. So that
Nice.
was a big deal for me, getting baptized, having my mom and stepdad and all of my family, even though they're still in addiction, they were there to witness my baptism.
That's awesome.
And yeah, they heard the pain in my voice. And yeah, and then doing those sets of steps were really needed. They didn't, for me, work right away. The reality is I still had obsessions. I still the reality is my mom was asking me to still pick her up beer before coming to her house. I
Yeah.
was still going there and I could smell meth coming from my brother's room, or like, you know what I mean? Like, or pot,
Yeah.
that's the reality. And so unfortunately, I even told my case manager there, I was like, I'm not going to stay away from my family. I don't care what you guys say. They are addicts. I was like, you can drug test me every time I come back. That is cool with me, but I can't stay away from them. They're my only people I have. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I wasn't allowed to see Josh, and he was my sober support, right? So I'm like, you can't take everybody away from me. I started attending church regularly. I started being of service, doing things like, coffee and holding the door, doing H&I, like all these things were just so interesting to me. And I finally felt my voice, like that I was finally being heard. Because for so long I shut down and I kept all that shit in. I didn't talk to anybody, and I felt scared to, because first I didn't want to be taken away,
Yeah.
or I didn't want someone to like penalize my mom. And so that was hard for me, because I love her to this day. And so things just started to get better, like little bit by little bit. My spouse, he kept saying whenever I'd see him at church or whatever, he'd be like, "Oh, another payday." So that's how we counted. It wasn't clean days.
Oh, I
It
see
was
what you're
how many
saying.
paydays I got through.
That's actually pretty. That's pretty cool. Actually, I never heard that one before. Really.
Yeah, so he'd always be like, another payday. And I was doing good things with my money. I was donating, I was tithing, I was helping homeless, I was praying with people around the Hope Mission, because I was literally walking out of my treatment center and seeing people used, and I just yearn for them, and I want to help them. And so I was constantly doing step 12, even before I'd finished my set of steps. But I had done 2 consecutive steps, and I felt so freeing. I had to do one at first to get the shit
All
off
that surface
top,
shit. Yeah.
and then it was the deep shit that was just pouring up and I was having dreams of, because I still had nightmares almost 9 to 10 months into treatment.
It took me 6 years before I could sleep through a night
Yeah.
after getting clean. Like
Yeah.
it took a long time, and I remember like, holy fuck, I slept through a night. Like the first time. Yeah, it was probably like 6 years after I quit the dope.
Yeah.
Like it took a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's super hard, and like, because I am an insomniac. So even at the treatment center, like I had to start taking, I hated pills because I always, was scared that I would turn out to be my mom and abuse them. But I got diagnosed bipolar, and I was like, F you, I'm not freaking bipolar. Like, I don't have any mental health issues. And we had to see this psychiatrist. I'm like, I don't even want to see her. She's lying.
I know better.
So they said, okay, do you want to go get a second opinion? I'm like, fuck yeah. So I go and I'm like, I'm ready for this. This guy is gonna just laugh about it. No, I cried, I laughed, I cried some more, I got angry, I was happy all of a sudden. And by the end of that hour, I'm still wiping out tears. They're happy tears now. I'm sorry to break it to you, sweetheart. You are 100% bipolar, and you need to go back and listen to that doctor and take those meds. I'm like, okay, sure. I'll
Fuck,
accept
two
it.
can't be wrong, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, because I actually trusted this guy,
Oh,
because
good.
he actually worked out of the addiction and mental health, which is AHS, downtown. They're across from City Center, so I would go there and see the addiction counselor there. That's who was constantly helping me get into treatment.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, so I went back, my tail between my legs, and I apologized. And it was my first like big amends. I'm like, I do need help, like apparently. So I had to own up that I have other struggles. I also have PTSD, from
I
all the
experienced that
trauma.
before.
Yeah,
From a relationship of all things.
really.
Yeah, it was fucking craziest shit I ever been in my life, But
Yeah.
yeah, I had nightmares after. It was crazy.
Yeah. No,
So
I believe you. But like, and the hard thing was, it was my own family that I was still around. And so it wasn't just someone who left, you know what I mean?
yeah,
So like,
you have to face those triggers. So
you
to
have to
speak.
face them every time you see them. Like every drunken phone call is a freaking trigger, and that's my anxiety will go through the roof. And as the year progressed, things started happening. I was asked to speak on Kiss and Country, and tell my story for the Hope Mission thon, this marathon they have. at the stadium. That was such a blessing. I got to speak at schools and tell my story. Especially my favorite was on Thanksgiving, which I have had bad Thanksgivings before. This Thanksgiving, I got to tell kids why they need to be grateful, and they were kids kindergarten to grade 5. So I had to kidify my story a lot, but it was such a blessing to be able to tell them that they should be grateful for their parents and what they do have, because some kids are
Yeah.
a little less fortunate. So that was a huge blessing. I got to speak at churches. I was just being asked to speak everywhere, and I felt like that was God's calling for me, like my purpose, that I'm supposed to go out there and help other people. And as the year come along, there was this big banquet. So I'm near the end of my thing. I'm graduating the program. I did a year. I was so stoked. Um, through this time, um, it was a surprise, but Josephine, which was the one who ran Springs, she was in charge with my spouse, and she invited him and gave him a ticket and everything. And I knew he was at work, so like, there's no way he would be there on a special day. And I couldn't even talk to him on the phone. I wasn't allowed, right? So I was really trying to obey by most of the rules that they had for me. And anyways, I'm in my high heels, this beautiful sparkly dress, and I just remember looking and hearing the sound of his car, and I knew it. And I'm running through this parking lot in heels because I hadn't really been able to hug him and kiss him, and you know what I mean? And so it was such a special day that she let him be there to celebrate me graduating. And that banquet was so beautiful and so memorable. And then I graduated. I got a place through Canadian Mental Health Association. So I had my own apartment. It was so exciting. And I decked it out the way I wanted to. And I got a cat named Hope. And that was such a blessing because I rescued her from the Hope Mission and I kept her at my mom's house. And then I got her back. So I actually rescued her that year. And then one of the surprises Josh had for me is that he wanted to fly me to BC, and I hadn't seen my cat in, is it 3.5, almost 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And so, and I got to go make amends too, which was pretty cool because I was pretty harsh on my ex's mom and dad. So we flew down to BC, got my cat, got all my belongings into a U-Haul. We drove back.
Nice.
Um, and my ex actually called me as we were on our way, and I also made amends to him.
Cool.
So those were a few amends out of the way, and
I got one.
yeah.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How hard was it to transition from that year-long program into your own place? What were some of the biggest struggles you had to overcome?
I didn't really have too many. Because I was constantly busy.
That makes sense.
Everything that I started doing in the treatment center, like schedules, I was big on schedules. Like, I had a day planner. I planned my days. Every day was something. Every moment was filled with something, helping others, being of service, going to meetings. I was so close to Alano because I was right off of 107th. I was sponsoring girls at the Wellsprings, and which was just down the other way on 107. I had really built a strong foundation. I think my mental health would have been probably the biggest struggle. If I were to think about the biggest thing, is that my mental health seems to be the biggest thing that comes into waves for me, like at moments where I feel like I'm good and God's got me, and then other moments I just feel like helpless and depressed.
Yeah.
And I know that things will be okay, but it's just my own self-conscious and my own struggles that I deal with. But I always feel better after I help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Helping another addict always takes away whatever I'm feeling, all that ick. Yeah, it just takes it away.
Yeah,
And then yeah.
that makes sense.
And I think also finances too, because finally being accountable to my own stuff. Like, I had to pay my own electricity. I had to make sure I was paying my phone bill now. I had to, so there's a lot of things, making sure my rent was paid on time. And I did. I was so proud of myself. I left that apartment building with good standings.
That's awesome.
So as it was like during that time too, I'd stayed living by myself because I wanted to go to school. So I went back to college because I had already
Oh,
graduated high school, right? So it was like that one thing that I never got to do. I became a medical office assistant, and I prayed about where I was going to work after I graduated. And there's a scripture I want to say right now. It's like, "For I know the thoughts you think, says the Lord, of peace and no evil, to give you a future and a hope." And it's Jeremiah 29:11.
you want to say that one more time, but slower?
For I, for I know the thoughts you think, says the Lord, of peace and no evil, to give you a future and a hope. And it's Jeremiah 29:11. That scripture means a lot to me. Hence why I named my cat Hope. And then when I graduated college, I knew that was what I was supposed to do because God put me in this medical clinic called the Hope Medical Clinic.
Okay.
And that was just off of 82nd and 122 Ave,
Yeah.
just as
Okay.
you're going to Yellowhead. And I loved it. I loved every second of it. That's actually where I found my Christian family doctor.
Nice.
And the people there are just beautiful. Like I left that on good standings too. Um, and then as I was working there, Josh and me got married. We had a COVID wedding. So there was like 12 people.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was a big deal. And I was excited too. So we were finally, we actually waited abstinent. We were abstinent through that year. And then also when I was in my own place. And so we actually sacrificed our sexual desires for God. And, I feel like that's why we were blessed with a child 11 months later.
Cool.
So things have been really good. Like, we're living in a beautiful house now. We don't own it, but that's our next plan of action. I've paid off all my student loans already,
Wow.
and no more debts. Josh has like one more, so we're just getting that knocked down. And to say that we're debt free is pretty amazing.
That is.
But God just kept on providing. Eventually, I got a job with Alberta Health Services doing the vaccines. So I was registering patients for the vaccination. So that was a cool aspect too, because that's where I really want to be, is with Alberta Health Services, and helping others.
Nice.
So whether it's my job or a vocation, as a hobby that I like to do, that I don't get paid for, because I like sponsoring. I love what I do. And yeah, life is good.
That's awesome.
I wanted to touch on the forgiveness aspect with my mom because, I didn't notice it right away. It was like after a year, I'd been in my own place and she called me drunk, like she always does. And, was asking for money or something dumb. I can't even remember what it was. But I'm usually like, what the fuck do you want, mom? I'm bored. Or what do you want? Tell me about it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Why are you crying? Yeah. But there was a softness in my heart where I was like, it's okay, mom, just cry. Because she was always crying. So usually you didn't want to hear her freaking cry. You would like do whatever you can to get off the phone.
Yeah.
And I knew I had forgiven her. So all that resentment and all that anger and all that frustration at her and for everything that I went through as a kid, to no longer hate her. Because I feel like at one point I hated her. Even though I wanted her to love me or accept me or to be a mom, like she's never capable of that. And that's okay. Like she
Yeah.
is sick and I've accepted that. Um, but I know since I've been sober how much impact I've had on her. She actually wants to know who God is. She barely drinks. I'm actually in charge of her finances now, which before, yeah, right,
Yeah. Yeah.
I pay all of her bills and her rent, and I give her enough. So she does drink at the end of the month. The reality is, I can't stop her.
Yep.
But she no longer drinks every single day.
Yeah.
She doesn't smoke crack every single day. I'd rather have one treat at the end of the month than have,
Yeah.
a treat every single day.
Yeah.
And so I feel like in a sense I'm kind of doing harm reduction with my mom. But we have a good relationship, and now that she's a grandma, she's really excited.
That's
I
cool.
know, she's a grandma again because I'm her last child that doesn't have kids. And I think that just means the world to her. And the fact that I have a good relationship with people in the fellowship. I have friends today, that don't just, I mean, I still have some that use, but you
Yeah.
got to have them in your life too, because I want to show them that there's a life out there.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to go delete. I have like 900 Facebook friends. I'm not going to go delete every addict. Like that would just be rude, right? You know what I mean? Those people still struggling. Because what if people did that to me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You got to be leading. What's funny is I went back to my old stomping ground 3 months later.
Yeah.
Just to show that I was kind of clean, to show other people. And it's funny. I grew up in a little town, but I moved an hour and a half away, and people would come to the detox that I would recognize and show them that there's another way of life, right?
Yeah.
That you'd use. It's kind of funny running into people that you used to use, and for them to be able to see how much change, right? Because people don't even recognize you half the time. They do, but they don't. Like they would never even know.
Yeah. Well, I have a funny, cool story about that too. So, do you remember the ex that left and I was like my first love?
Yep.
So I had been going to my buddy's concert. So we all used to work at Just Energy together. So this is a big clan of us. I have not seen any of them in at least 5 years, I want to say, maybe even longer. So once Thor left, he pretty much took all my friends too, except my one best friend Angie. And so me and her were like, we're gonna go support Ryan. I'm pregnant at this time, by the way. So I'm like, what am I going to Union Hall for? I'm pregnant. I'm like, literally, I was about to pop. I was 8 months pregnant. And then someone said Richie's going to be there, and okay, he's cool, buddy. And then I didn't think he would be there, but I told my husband at the time, I was like, honey, there's a chance that he may show up. I just want you to know it's not that I'm going there to see him. I'm going to see my buddy Ryan at his
Yeah.
concert. And he's like, okay, no, I totally understand. You got to make amends. And so we get there, and me and her are just having some good laughs. We're talking to Richie, we're talking to Ryan, we're with all these people who are freaking hammered because we're in a club. You know what I mean? It was so awkward because me and her were not drinking. And sure enough, they walk in. He doesn't even recognize me. So it was funny. I don't know if Richie did this on purpose, but he like passed me his drink. And so I'm like sitting there with an alcoholic beverage. I'm doing this, but I'm like, when is he going to come back? Like, and I was like, hey, we just need to go over there. Like, I think he's hinting that he wants us to go over there, right? Like, pass a pregnant lady your drink. So I walk on over and I'm like, here you go, Richie. And of course, I break the ice because I'm outgoing. And he was like a ghost, just
Yeah,
hit him.
dumbfounded. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're all talking. And I just went over and I said, hey, like, if you have a moment, would you mind coming to the smoke pit with me? I would like to make amends to you. Because that was the one person on my list left. I had made amends to everyone. I didn't care how harsh or the situations, how bad it was, because they always say, like, if it's dangerous, don't do it. Well, I did them all. I'm like, F it. You know what I mean? Like, I want this shit off my chest,
Yep.
right? So, anyways, he comes to have a smoke pit. He's in still shock. Like, he cannot believe what he's seeing. It's like, how? What? How did you get sober? What changed? Why couldn't you do it then? He's
Oh,
like
he's a
asking
little
me.
resentful. Like,
Very resentful.
yeah.
I said, well, God was a big part of it. On top of that, I went to a treatment center. I just kept hitting more and more lows after and I told him what happened. And, you know, I asked him how he's doing, and he's miserable, still drinking, still in the same old, job, same misery. And he's like, I'm just miserable. And he was angry, and I was like, it's okay. And I was so calm. I don't think I've ever been that calm in my life. But the fact that he said, I don't even recognize who you are. The woman standing before me is not the woman I remember. And I just said, well, I hope at the end of this, like, if we never see each other again, like, I really want you to be happy. And I found out that he had not been with a woman since me, and that had been 7 years
Wow. That's crazy.
because I scarred him from ever wanting to be with a woman. And that made me feel so sad because now here's me. I got a husband, and, I got a baby on the way. Life's really amazing for me. But to see him so hurting and that I was a part of that hurt, but I told him he deserves love, and that, I hope he finds that one day and gives someone a chance, right?
Yeah.
Because the end of it, right? Like, we all deserve that.
Yeah.
And I prayed for him, which is so weird because he was like, he's not a person of God. So every aspect of that meeting was needed. But
Oh, and you probably found some forgiveness in that ting, like after. Well,
yeah,
having to
I
forgive
already
yourself,
forgave.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a hard thing. I think it's easier to forgive everybody else than
Yeah.
it
I
is to
agree.
forgive myself.
I,
I still have a little bit of shame and guilt because I have done bad things, right? I don't know if I've truly forgiven myself. I know Jesus has. So I guess that's all I can.
well, it takes time too, right?
Hmm.
Like, and it takes years, and you're coming up on 4 years here, right?
Yeah, in
So,
October.
and and I hate to say this, but like, just the growth and the clarity that keeps coming. You know what? Like, you look back and you're like, holy fuck! Like, the longer you stay clean, the less you know.
Yeah.
When it comes to life, in a sense.
Yeah.
Um, I got a question for you. How'd you deal with triggers?
Okay. So so okay, they're kind of different because back then I immediately would call a sponsor or keep myself busy for 3 to 5 minutes. Because that was another thing for me. I noticed my triggers didn't last long. So like I'd see Brillo and I'd be pissed off that there's Brillo there for like dishes, like people who wash
Yep.
dishes, they use it. So I get mad about it, but
It's
They
a
would
you problem.
it was, yeah. So I would go keep myself busy and just not look at it again, and then it kind of went away and over time. But a lot of them I dealt with right away because I put them on my resentment list. Like I said, 118th Avenue was a resentment. Brillo was a resentment. I know they're so dumb, but I had to put them on there because I did. I every time I looked at them, I would want to puke.
Yeah.
But it's keeping yourself busy through that time. It can be so hard even now, but I feel like as time goes on, they get littler and littler. So my trigger now would be like, you left a dish in the living room and it should be in the kitchen. I'm just bugging, but you know what I
You
mean. Like
hear
I was
that?
just trying to think of something on the spot, but they're not like crazy, and I don't freak out as bad
They're almost more
with that
thoughts.
stuff. Yeah, maybe I kind of just said that wrong, but
More thoughts than triggers.
yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. I like to ask this question to all the guests is do you have any mentors or role models, and in what areas of your life?
Hmm.
I like that
Okay,
one.
that is a very good one. Okay, well, my sister with the family aspect, because my sister, she got married after me, so that was really cool to be there. But she's an amazing mom. So, because I'm really scared I'm gonna fuck up my kid, man.
Just stay on this path, you'll be okay, you know?
Yeah, so my mentor when it comes to family is my sister. She's just amazing in every aspect. Like her kids are doing so well. Like they have great jobs. They're good people. And like that's what I would want.
Mm.
Sobriety, my mentor would have to be Ronnie. Shout out. Um, I didn't believe her when she told me how much clean time she had because that when I first she was it 15? I think it was 15 years she had, and I didn't believe her. Said, "There's no freaking way you're not using on weekends. There's no way you are there's no way." I could not wrap my head that people were sober this long
Yep.
and not using. So she is my role model for that. That's why I prayed about. And then she didn't even want to work with me. I had to freaking like ask her like so many times, and she's like, "Wow, you're persistent." And I'm like, "Buddy, it's the freaking life or death, man. Like I need you to work with me because I want what you have."
Mhm.
I couldn't get 7 days back to back, let alone 15 years.
Yeah.
So, recovery, yeah, Ronnie.
I tried getting her on the show too.
Yeah,
Ronnie.
I know she's the one I called right away. I'm like, yo, you need to do this. She's like, oh, I already talked to Matt. And I'm like, but I'm pretty sure I didn't see your name on that list, right?
Yeah, it's not on there. And that's okay, right? That's okay. I don't take it personal. What's on your what goals are you working towards today?
Goals. So paying off all of our debt and buying a house is a big one. Trying to get through mat leave right now. But no, I mean helping others. That's kind of I've been just so busy. Like I got jamming for sobriety on the grow. I want to help with this end the stigma. Um, Continuing doing sports like I have been. Uh, s- yeah. I don't know. I don't guess I don't have really many goals right now. I guess it's just trying to be a good mom. Because, like I said, I'm really scared. I don't even know how to be a good wife. Like I had asked, my husband, like I even said to him, like, this is hard for me. It's scary because what if I'm like my mom? That thought just it's not to say that my mom doesn't have good qualities because she does.
Yep.
She's loving, caring, she would give her shirt off her back, right? For anybody. Um, but it's the scary qualities like the yelling and the anger and
I had a friend. He's like, you can't get it wrong when it comes to kids. Like, I shouldn't say that, but like, you can't. There is no playbook. There's no rule book. There's nothing like to say what is the correct way. Like, there's a million different ways and a million different views, and you know, take what you can and leave the rest, right? And
yeah,
one of the biggest myths I ever had before I had children was my children's never going to be like that. My children was however the fuck they wanted to be,
yeah,
like they have whatever personality. And like my youngest, like she's a wild child, but my oldest is an angel. Like it's crazy how different they can be, and you got to adapt to each one, right?
yeah,
So
very true.
just do the best you can, and that's it, right? That's all we got.
That's true. Actually, I do actually have an answer to that question now that I think about it. So, I've never met my birth father. And so this August, I actually found them, my birth dad's side. I have a grandma out there. My dad's alive. Um, I have cousins. I have another brother named Tyler, which is really weird. Two other sister. 3 other sisters. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure there's 4 of them as well. And yeah, so I'm gonna go down there this August and
Nice.
meet them. They're all in Armstrong, BC. So me and Josh have an entire trip planned. So the goal right now, I guess, is saving for that. So I guess I do have a goal.
Cool. That's yeah. That's good.
I had to think about that one. I'm like, do I have goals?
We'll do someone, right? Like I
Yeah.
write mine down too now. You know.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. What else do I want to ask you? What was the biggest myth about recovery that got debunked? I guess.
What do you mean by that?
Um, getting clean is going to be boring. What
Mm.
was something or a myth that that you thought about recovery that turned out to be false?
Well, that is a good one because it's true. I didn't think I could have fun in recovery. Um, but another one. Yeah, I didn't believe that all those promises would come true. Like if you really think about it, like I didn't think my life could be this good. I mean, I thought it would just be like me alone, you know. But I still do fun things. And I mean, I don't go to like what I was saying with Union Hall there. That was a one-time thing. I don't just go to clubs because that's not me at all, especially when I was pregnant. But no, I have a life. I do things now. Like we're a part of sports. We go to ball games. I like watching the Stanley Cup playoffs, like things like that. Like I didn't think life would be this way. So
Makes
I
sense.
guess in general, all of it.
That makes sense. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Um, what opportunity? Oh, I guess I was. I think you pretty much covered like a lot of the questions. I was gonna ask you like what opportunities have presented themselves, but you shared about sharing. Being able to carry the message. Um, Here's one for you. What are you passionate about today?
Hmm. Uh, well, I like singing. I love music. I'm big into this God twang right now, by this rare breed. Like it's awesome. It's Christian rap music. I love that. Um, oh, I'm passionate about. I don't know, my just everybody around me. Like I'm excited for people. Like my best girl Alyssa just moved into her own place. Like shout out to you, buddy. But like tomorrow I'm gonna go see and support that. I don't know, like people's success, I
Yeah,
guess, because like I'm just so proud because I knew Alyssa. Like when I was talking about that house in Abbotsfield, she was there. I actually took her in when she was 16 and we didn't get reunited until I walked down the stairs of Wellsprings for the first time and like seeing her there. Like to know that my best friend was getting sober at the same time as me was fucking crazy,
yeah,
so I don't know, I'm excited about other people. I just, and then my sponsees in college, are doing all these courses in school and I just, yeah, everyone around me is just doing so well and I just want to share the glory.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, I like the expression. Well, they say my five. You hang around with the people you want to kind of become, right? Or it kind of shows the direction that you're going, and show me your friends, and I'll tell you what you're about.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
Um, I just drew a blank actually.
Yeah.
How hard was it to build that connection with God?
I actually remember so we were sitting in Wellsprings and there was this lady there and she was telling me that I just have to accept him into my heart. And I was like, you have no fucking idea. I'm angry at him. Like I was mad because I felt like God was the reason why everything happened the way it did. And she said, well, could you think you could like accept him as your Lord and Savior? And I said, well, I don't know. So she brought me this poem that was like the footprints in the sand that shows that
I love
when
that poem.
me too, I actually wear the bracelet. So
That's
this is the footprints in the sand bracelet. And so when I thought I was alone, God was there carrying me through. And so that was deep. And I cried and cried and cried some more because I then understood. I could think about all those times where I should have been dead as a child and he made it so that we were okay. And so I do believe that he had a purpose for me long before I even knew it. And I actually remember saying the prayer because she's like, say this prayer and, just open the door for him. So I did. But later in my bed, I said to him, I was like, but I'm so fucking mad at you. And I hope you know that. Like, right? Like, let me soften my heart to like you
mm,
again. But I mean, right now, I'm angry at you, but I will give you a shot. Here you go. And there's this scripture in the Bible that says, when you know God and turn away from him, you're worse than those who didn't know him at all. So during that time when I had left for that year with my spouse,
Yep.
remember I told you we went on another tangent. During that year, I had turned my back from him, and you could tell God was upset, but he forgave me. And so that's something, a reminder, like I don't want to turn away from him anymore. Like I just want to embrace him. But I've seen the miracles he's worked in my life and the miracles he's worked in other people. Like, I mean, I can't even refute it anymore. Like it's like
Yeah. I
he
heard this one. Sorry.
that's okay.
I heard this thing at church. And it's always stuck with me is God doesn't use this big thundering voice, right? Where you can hear it. He speaks very softly and quietly because you have to come closer to him to hear it.
Hmm.
And I was like, huh, interesting.
Yeah,
So I think we're pretty much out of time at this
that's
point.
cool. I got a baby to get home to, so
um, what do you want to take us home with? What's something you'd like to leave with the listeners? Final thoughts.
um if you're struggling, you're not alone. Like we all struggle. Addiction doesn't get easier over time. Like I can tell you right now, I still have my struggles. But my first thought, it may be that, oh, I want to get high, but do I act on it? No, it'll go away because I do use the tools. I call someone, I reach out. That is the biggest thing that has kept me sober throughout this whole time, no matter how angry or frustrated or how much anxiety I have. I just don't, I have these supports that I've built because it takes a freaking village. All right. We cannot do this alone. And if you feel like you can do it alone, I'm sorry, then you're one of the rare few because I know I couldn't, because my loneliness and isolation always led me back to the pipe. So just stick around. And yeah, get your butt to a meeting. Thank you.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming here. Thank you for taking the time to share your truth with us.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. I loved every minute of it. And for everybody out there listening, you know what? If you're enjoying this podcast, hit that subscribe button, give us a like, do a rating review. I'd love to hear what you think. And yeah, make lots of memories, take lots of pics, and show the world your smile. Thanks.